So, Aquiles, I'm glad that you brought up China because I pulled them up on the screen here because we're talking mostly about Canada and Mexico for obvious reasons, right? There are immediate neighbors, and it's ironic because Trump is the one that tore apart the first NAFTA, made his USMCA, and then out of the blue said, "I'm tearing that up. I'm going to start a trade war with our neighbors again." And then he threw in China for 10% tariffs. And then China, I mean, we all know, everybody in the United States, you don't have to be, you know, a financial guru to know that the US relies heavily on Chinese production of goods, of all the stuff that we use. So China does have the capacity and the power to slap back, right? And they did. And this is what it looks like. CBS here, showing 15% on coal, 15% on
Hmm.
liquefied natural gas, 15 or 10% on crude, 10% ag machinery, 10% large engine cars. I mean, these are some of the things that the US exports that China takes. China's not going to take this lying down. No one seems to be talking that much about the trade, the tariff war with China, because it's been ongoing ever since his
Hmm.
first administration. Where do you see this going? Because China's obviously they're not they didn't respond this way the first time in Trump's first administration, but now they are. So how do you see
Yeah,
that shaking out?
I think it's a preemptive strike on the part of the Chinese. And the second thing, like I said before, we got the sensationalism. The Chinese have made their move. Now we, as the Americans, are thinking, okay, well, the Chinese have a certain amount of goods and products that come in, but now in a roundabout way, Mexico has a lot more products coming to them. So, it's cheaper to produce similar in Mexico for exportation to the United States. So that's just one thing to consider. Back to your question, with the 15%, with the 10%, they are slapping that right back at us. We're going to be tit for tat with the Chinese. They didn't go as high as 20% because they have a lot more goods, to offer the United States. So they just went. I mean, the United States has more goods to offer as well to the Chinese. Uh, and honestly, the Chinese could be just shrugging their shoulders at this particular moment, saying, okay, 15, 10%, you come up to 20%, we'll take you up to 25%, and we're in a trade war.
This is
Big
like
deal.
poker.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's
But I mean,
worse than
we're the ones
poker.
paying for it, no?
That's right. And we are the ones who need to say to our government, hey, knock it off. Have a little bit more responsibility here? Can we let some more adults into the room? Can we form a bipartisanship to address these tariffs? Because this shouldn't be one person's idea alone. This should be a bipartisan approach, which hasn't been happening in over a decade, guys. The bipartisanship has been lacking severely. It used to be, if you look back to the Clinton days, when you had a Republican Congress and working with Clinton, the Speaker of the House talking, saying positive things. I don't see that leadership here in the current Congress, in the Senate, and the Congress itself. So, the House. So, my particular thoughts and feelings is, how difficult would it be to have everybody, including President Trump, get together in a spirit of governance and say, hey, let's make this happen. Let's make it for the right reasons and happen. Yeah, we need to get some more revenue in. Let's not kid ourselves. Yeah, but let's do this the right way. Let's not just be a petulant child saying, we're going to slap you with tariffs and that's it. And you're going to fold because we're the United States.
Well, I feel like that kind of behavior has just been rewarded by the way Canada responded and by the way Mexico responded. I mean, right now, I have video here we can look at. Right now, there's literally Mexican troops being sent to the border. I think a lot of this is over by Tijuana. That they're moving there right now. I mean, they're literally shipping 10,000 border guards. I mean, aren't they folding to basically what Donald Trump wants because they're obviously trying to avoid this trade war, but that and at the same time, it's rewarding bad behavior. It's awarding petulant, childish behavior.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, but we have to remember that the Mexican military is corrupt, corrupt as sin. I mean, and
True.
unfortunately, a lot of there's a saying amongst Latinos that goes, "As Mexico, so does the rest of Latin America, Central and Latin America go."
Hmm.
So what you have to remember is at this point, Mexico is simply continuing the policies that AMLO started with of this capitulation to the United States. They were being tough on other things, but they have a new president. She's inexperienced dealing with a gentleman like this, in my opinion. And still showing force. I watched her press conference in Spanish the other day, and she made some really good points about the U.S. But at the same time, I think she's also showing that, hey, we're open to it. You know, we're open to the possibility, but that doesn't mean we're just going to roll over on you. And that's what we have to remember. There are, the politicians in other countries like Canada, like Mexico, actually answer to the voters. All right, the voters will kick them out. I mean, I watched in one Latin American country, there was a pots and pans campaign where they were banging on pots every single day until they got what they wanted, and they did get what they wanted. You know, it sounds funny, but the people forget, especially the citizens here, we forget the power that we have against the government. We just are apathetic in the sense to this. We can fight back, absolutely. We can pressure our congressmen and senators to make more responsible decisions. It's not just, hey, let's lay down, oh, it's too hard. No, it's not going to be that way. If you want true change in the government, and I'm not talking radical change, I'm just talking, hey, if we're going to all get along, we have to all agree, not just one side of the aisle.
Yeah. Americans like being keyboard warriors. I think a lot of it. The pots and pans thing. It's like, oh, that's novel. I hadn't thought about that. So
You
I
know, it's
find that
funny.
quite
That was
amusing.
Indians in Ecuador. They
Indian,
yeah,
really
the indigenous
indigenous.
population. Yep, in Ecuador, marching on the Capitol, asking for the ouster of a president, and it became not just amongst them, but the entire population said, "Okay, enough's enough." And I think less than a month later, he was out.
Well, do you think this ties at all, Aquiles, with how Mexico is responding? Ties into the mass deportations and stuff that Trump is now outlining and making good on, right? Like he had his envoy Granell going to Venezuela. President Maduro suddenly appears to be friendlier with the second Trump administration, saying, "Yeah, we'll take back 350,000 illegal migrants." Do you foresee that maybe this is part of the calculation with Trump and how he's throwing this tariff threat on Mexico based on the theory that you said, how Mexico goes, the rest of Latin America will go? Well, do you think this is, part and parcel of that maybe he's thinking, hey, Venezuela has a lot of oil. Hey, there's production capacity somewhere else in other parts of Latin America. So Mexico, you better get with it or I'm going to go make best friends with Maduro right now.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. People also forget there is a huge oil cache in the Amazons. So the surrounding countries that the Amazons flows through, there is possibility for development there. All right. So that's another thing. A lot of people don't know that, by the way. So going back, yeah, we make the example with Mexico. Maybe something is happening under the table money wise, guys, which would not be
Yeah.
unusual. We have paid off governments for many years down in Latin America.